Good afternoon, Chair.
Hi, Darius. How are you?
I am doing well. How are you doing today?
I'm doing all right.
We do have Director Wheeler sent me a note that they are running late and they may
Okay.
be missing. So
Okay.
heard it from anyone else. So
Okay.
I guess we'll wait and see. And I'm assuming you got the email from the AG's office as well.
Yeah, that was great information to have. I'm appreciative of that. So,
Okay.
it's like we don't quite have,
We do now.
we do now. Okay. All right.
Sorry, I'm late.
That's okay. It's not that late anyway. Um, sometimes it takes a while to even get the computer going and the all the buttons pushed. So, um, well, welcome everyone. We do have quorum at this point, so we'll get started and we'll hope that some others will join us. So we will, let's see. I call the meeting to order of the Non-Attainment Area Air Pollution Mitigation Enterprise Board. And I would ask Darius to do the roll call.
Absolutely, Chair. Director Suniga, Director Holguin.
Here, here,
Uh, thank you. Director Wheeler, excused. Director Stockinger,
Here,
Director Furco,
here.
Vice Chair Baca, and Chair Stevens.
Here, sorry.
We do have a quorum, Chair.
Wonderful. All right. So our first item on the agenda is public comment. Is there anyone here to give public comment? I don't believe so. Darius, have you heard from anyone who wanted to give public comment?
We did
Okay,
not
we'll
receive any.
close. Oh, we'll close public comment, and just remind folks that who are watching that they can come back anytime and give public comment. And Director Holguin is joining from South America, which is exciting. And we appreciate your still being here because there's probably some other fun things you could be doing. So thank you for logging on, and it's fine for you not to have your camera off or fine to anyway, you know what I'm saying. We will move on to the next agenda item, which is approval of the minutes from our last meeting, February 27th. Is there a motion for this item?
I'll move we approve the minutes from February 27th.
Thank you, Director Stockinger. Is there a second on that?
I'll second.
Okay. Motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Say nay. Anyone abstaining? Okay, that
I
motion.
will be abstaining as I was not in attendance at the last meeting.
Okay. So I think that there's that motion would pass there's only four of us still, right? Three with three yeses and one abstention. So we will move on to the next item, which is the large grant program discussion. Darius.
Thank you, Chair. I do want to preference this before we go to the board that this is very preliminary discussions. This is some ideas for the board to react to, and there may be future refinements as we go through with this type of program, working through what's best from an administrative standpoint and what's allowed under the enterprise's rules and what's allowed under statute. So there may be some modifications as we go along, but based on some of the work that the board already has done in terms of setting out how it would like the enterprise to be run, that kind of gives the basis on taking a look at the larger grant program, which is going to be focused on BRT. And so just as some reminders of previous discussions, like over the past couple of years, as the board has been working on developing this program, the idea was to take a look at two separate grant programs. One is the Community Clean Transportation Assistance Program, which is undergoing right now, and the other is for a larger program for potentially larger infrastructure projects in the non-attainment area. And those will be based off of the needs that have been identified within the Denver Metro and the North Front Range communities. Bus rapid transit projects have already been prioritized, and we had some of those presented to the board of directors a couple of times over the past couple of years. And the board has planning allocations of 123 million over the life of the 10-year plan. I will note that these are planned based off of revenue projections and not the actual allocations, which is done with the annual budget. So, but that's what's in our 10-year plan currently, as passed by the board last year. Just as a quick reminder, the typical BRT elements, usually looking at more rapid service with higher frequency, dedicated lanes, signal priority, specific stations instead of stops, which include station amenities and sidewalk improvements, and designed to be an overall faster and usually a much more quicker service than you would get from what you would have with local bus service. Looking into the Denver region as part of the DRCOG Regional Transportation Plan, which the Colorado Department of Transportation and some of the local communities are supporting. They have several corridors in the mix for the next 20 years, part of their 20-year plan, which includes in the near term things like Federal Boulevard, Colorado 119, Colorado Boulevard, and others. As part of the North Front Range Regional Transportation Program, Regional Transportation Plan, excuse me, there has been talk of expanding existing service, looking at some priorities from the local communities in the North Front Range area and the development of premium transit corridors as well. And they presented some options that are being considered by the North Front Range metropolitan area. And so we have a very beginning draft document that staff has kind of put together for reaction and for potential comments. And at a very high level, some of the things that have been carried over that would be universal policies, I believe that the board would want to consider is, of course, from an eligibility criteria, it must be within the non-attainment area. Any of these types of projects or support the non-attainment area. It must be an eligible entity to receive funds under the statutes that establish NAAPME, demonstrate ozone benefits, and follow all the applicable state, federal, and local statutes and rules. And as part of the evaluation criteria, the proposal is looking at ozone benefits and/or GHG reduction benefits as required under statute, engaging with, located in, or helping improving economic conditions with disproportionately impacted communities, prioritize within a transportation improvement program at the state or local level, and demonstrate a likelihood of success and ongoing maintenance, which for most of the items that were presented as projects that are looking out in the future, that usually what you would see with that, these last three items. So a couple of new items that would be added to any type of program is taking a look at as new things from an eligibility criteria is is putting in what would be eligible as part of development of a bus rapid transit system. And it's usually, and most of these projects are looking at developing the actual infrastructure for it or doing the capital purchases for it. So there may be other types of amenities such as building the stations, whatever needs to be done on the current local roads to accommodate that. So as we build out this program, we'll probably, this potential criteria will probably get more defined. But in general, we would want to define it as supporting those types of projects as they are developed and prioritized either with the state, the MPO, or the locals transportation plans, and also be evaluated with it. Now, the bigger question is going to be the funding piece, which we've had a couple of workshops to explore this, and this is something that staff will be looking at to present potential options for the board. Right now, the board has a couple of options, but sorry, I lost my train of thought. The potential options are taking a look at being able to allocate what is available, what has been collected now, or doing a potential allocation of future funds, which contains a little bit of risk because there is no guarantee of the revenues coming in. There could be potential scenarios where revenues could come in lower than what is anticipated. However, so far the enterprise has collected more revenues than were in the original projection. So, but those options are something that staff is exploring. So before we have a decision in front of this board, we will probably want to explore that a little bit more, but at least we're able to get any potential feedback from board members as we develop this program. So going into that, again, this is at a very high level, a very draft beginning start to taking a look at this. I think at the bottom is what is expected to be collected over the life of the 10-year plan. And currently, or by the end of fiscal year 26, it's expected to have about 21.15 million available, with additional funds ranging from 10 million all the way up to 23 million to be collected over those next 6 years. So about $123 million available. And so any type of call for project or any type of funding allocation will probably need to be under what the revenue projection is. And staff is looking at probably about potentially 100 million, depending how the board wants to go. So if it's only with funds that the board currently has, that would probably be a much smaller pot. But those might be items that as staff works through potential scenarios and see from a risk perspective, bringing that forth for the board to approve. And also wanting to, as we take a look at this, if we have to go with a grant model in order to do this as we have with like the small piece or the smaller grant program, looking at setting out those limits with it. We're pretty sure that a lot of these projects are going to be are probably not going to be funded all with NAAPME funds. It's NAAPME contributing to those projects, and they're most likely going to have funds on the table. So we're not going to have to worry about match requirements. No doubt they're going to have something already in there. So that's probably going to be the biggest item to discuss over the next few months as we work through this and get ready for putting a program out on the door. Now, again, this is just a draft timeline. Is if we were to do if what the enterprise is to do a grant-like program, this would be a potential timeline to follow for applicants to go in and put in applications, and for those applications to be reviewed and approved by the board following the same timeline. So usually if September is the date that is the go-ahead and it's approved by the board, this is what the timeline would look like, and we would adjust based off of what that start date would be. So because of new grant programs, we want to give enough time for for grantees in order to look up all of the requirements and be able to be successful with their application, unlike programs that have been out there in the past. And I think that model has worked well with the CC-TAP, giving enough time for grantees to ask questions and refine their applications. So with that, that's the end of the presentation. So like I said, we're at the very beginning stages of developing this. We have a draft document that is starting to work out some of these questions, but happy to answer any potential questions board members have at this point, or if there's any direction that you'd like to see from staff or anything else to bring forward at a future board meeting.
Thank you, Darius. Any questions for Darius on that larger grant program? Darius, I have a question. So, coming from the North Front Range Metropolitan Planning Organization, we don't have as many sort of projects in the hopper with regard to bus rapid transit. I mean, I don't know if we want to, expand the criteria at all to like include, you know, bus expansion on major corridors or some kind of other language that would kind of loop in maybe some areas that maybe don't have bus rapid transit yet, or are there opportunities to get planning grants? Because I know, like, for example, on like the North Front Range MPO, we're anticipating some service between like Greeley and Loveland on 34. And so I don't know that it's technically bus rapid transit yet or what's contemplated on it, but it's certainly an important corridor. It links two different counties. I don't, I don't know how we feel about that, but that, as we look for having some, regional equity kind of with these dollars, does that make sense to you at all?
Yeah, and I'd say from looking at a program perspective, expanding the program may be more difficult because we don't have the funds necessarily to accomplish everything on there. But from a regional equity standpoint, that could be something that the board may want to consider, and staff could come up with a proposal in order to make sure that we have that regional equity. My memory might be faulty. I thought the US 34 route was envisioned as bus rapid transit, but maybe that has changed since that time.
I think it is, and yet, I mean, the frequency, I don't know, initially at least, would meet that 5 to 15 minute kind of mark.
Yeah.
I'm not sure exactly what's, contemplated, but just thinking about it, I mean, we have some in Fort Collins, but some of what's contemplated is not necessarily, probably wouldn't hit some of the equity goals that we want to hit too. So I guess, kind of thinking on, um, you know, I mean, we don't have to decide that today, but I just wanted to throw that out there, thinking that, that's a corridor that I think is really important. It's been identified in 10-year plans. And yet, I mean, I don't know how far away it is from being, what's technically considered BRT because of not having the infrastructure in place certainly yet. And then the frequency, I don't know that it would be that frequent initially. So anyway, maybe there may be room to expand the definition a little bit to include some corridors that are really almost there, but not quite, if that
Yeah,
makes
and I
sense.
think absolutely, Chair. I think there is, the original slide is kind of trying to identify what would be envisioned with a bus rapid transit at a very high level, but not every single corridor is going to be the same. Like not every single corridor is going to have a dedicated lane because you don't have the right of way in order to do that. So there may be specific items that are trying to help with more rapid movement and more frequent movement, but maybe it's not necessarily exactly every 5 to 15 minutes, but maybe it is more frequent than what you get from a local bus service. So that may be something that we can explore. And if the board would like, we could always bring back some of the planning partners that are conceiving these to give an update, because it has been a little bit of a time, if that helps.
That'd be great. Thank you. Director Stockinger.
Yeah, thanks. I guess first to the chair's point, I think it's a good thought to consider. I'm fully supportive of BRT, but we want to maybe look at the other larger transit programs. In particular, I think a September timeline probably works pretty good because we have Senate Bill 184 included more funds for the clean transit enterprise. They don't have the formula yet of how those dollars get divvied up amongst the transit agencies. So that could also be a funding source for other projects. And I would just say I certainly support the BRT, and I know there's been questions about are we going to have federal funding and what's the status of some of this. This presentation just shows that we're still fully on board delivering BRT along the Front Range, because I think that is probably one of the best ways to reduce the greenhouse gases, which is really a primary reason for this enterprise to exist. So I think this is heading in the right direction.
Thank you, Director Stockinger. And I will we may have that update too with a legislative update, but today's JBC announcement that transportation is one of the departments that's taking a pretty big hit in the budget as the state tries to, balance its budget and really, account for those shortfalls. I mean, it makes these dollars even more crucial to make sure that we're putting them in the right place. I know there will definitely be gaps for some folks, and how do we, sort of help address some of those gaps that we're seeing without some of the federal and state dollars that we would normally see. Director Suniga, and welcome. Good to see you.
Thank you. I apologize. I was in an appointment and trying to get back in time. So I missed some of that conversation, but just from what I kind of walked in on, I just want to advocate for equity to remain a large part of this, being that with all of the governmental DEI, mandates to erase equity, this program is not. We have no responsibility to that mandate because we are not getting federal funds for this. In a sense, it's raising itself. And so I want to protect that piece of this. And I know governments are going to be shortfall. I mean, everybody's going to have a shortfall, but we had a clear vision and a clear instruction when we came on board here to make sure that this impacts people who are at risk are in an equity sense. This impacts those people primarily and forcefully. So I do not want to lose that, because I think we're going to be seeing a bunch of requests coming to us to kind of fill in some gaps. I don't feel that this is what we intended to do, but I would certainly be open to listening to anything that comes forward, and then using the framework that we have developed to see if it truly falls within it aligns with the mandates that we have. But I would also ask that there be some kind of maybe not a study, perhaps not that strongly, but some kind of evidence or some kind of research that supports these projects, even if it's a gap funding measure that we're looking at. I'd like to see where it touches on the basis of equity. So thank you.
Thank you, Director. Yeah, I think that you probably have agreement here. I see one thumbs up. We don't want to go back on the criteria that we set up, and we want to, and you may have missed the slide that Darius showed that kind of a lot of this criteria we are going to roll over. Thank you for bringing it. So I'm just thinking of projects that lose funding or have gaps that also still meet this. I wouldn't want to entertain just any project. I mean, I think it's still we really still need to keep it within our criteria, but I very much appreciate what you had to say and agree with that. Anyone else with questions or comments?
If I could, Chair, just to help reiterate that point, I don't know when I don't know when you came into the meeting, Director Suniga, but one of the things is making sure that the applicants, when they're looking at these projects, are they engage with, and the projects are either engaging with, located within, support, and identify the economic benefits and improve the economic conditions in DI communities. This is a totally state-funded piece, as you had mentioned, and we are still under state statute, and state statute has been cleared and will follow state statute. Now, I think when in terms of funding gaps from a state perspective, that's kind of a little bit unclear at this time. If there's anything from a federal perspective, I don't know all of those offhand, and if that affects any of these projects that are already envisioned that we've already that have already been presented on there. But I think based on some of those presentations, especially some of the ones that are more near term to going through construction, like the Federal Boulevard, they've already done a lot of that outreach and working with those different types of communities in order, and should be able to answer some of those questions very well and be able to demonstrate that, in addition to the reductions in ozone and greenhouse gas emissions. But I would agree that the board was pretty clear with those without those instructions, and that will be going forward. There might be some potential where we might get more interest than we would normally get, but of course that would be up to the board's purview. But the board still has the requirements that it's set up in the 10-year plan, and that's what we will follow until the board decides to change them.
Thank you, Darius. Thanks for that clarification. Director Holguin, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not sure how to frame the question, or maybe it's just an observation, but some of the things that I've been thinking about is the impact that the current complaint that the enterprise is going through, and the potential outcome of that if it gets elevated. But I guess with perhaps a reduced federal funding, I'm wondering if this gives us a little bit more time. It seems like September might be the timeline, but I'm wondering if it might just be even 2027. And I know that our transportation needs are significant and we wouldn't necessarily want to wait, but I also wonder if having to reconfigure funding for BRT gives us an opportunity to, I guess, just think about other options, and hopefully the complaint gets resolved and then we know for sure how we're moving forward. But not necessarily a question, just a reflection on how all of these federal funding and complaint is impacting this enterprise.
Director Holguin. It's definitely up to the board in order to take a look when the appropriate time. As I said during the presentation, there is some administrative pieces to work through, depending on what happens with the complaint that's been filed against all of the enterprises created under 260. If that is resolved, that opens up some potential other avenues for how a program would be structured, and that may open up some of that out. So I think the September piece was just a start from staff, but of course, if the board would like to take a look at these and look at a different time, or if it from a just an administrative standpoint on how to get the funding out, if it takes a little bit longer, of course, we can bring forward other potential proposals. So we'll take that into consideration.
Great, thank you. Any other questions before we move on? Okay. Well, thank you, Darius, for that. And we will talk about our current grant now.
So, yes, so we're kind of in the little process right now. We are putting together potential technical level answers on to the applicants who submitted items for draft review. I should have moved forward on this, but for draft review, and we're kind of waiting to see what other applications that we had gotten in. I think we have gotten around 11 applications for that draft review period. We probably expect there will be a few more that come in on here from eligible entities, and we'll see what's available and put together items for the May meeting, which is probably going to be the main meeting to take a look at the take a look at what would be appropriate for the board to approve for funding. So most of the rest of the stuff that the board is, excuse me, that staff has worked on between now and then is continuing to update the facts document. There was a broken link on the NOFO. We fixed that, so that way it works now. Then we've been answering questions, and that's kind of where we're at right now. So we're just kind of in a little bit of a waiting game to see when see if there's any more applications are due, and that will be April 30th of 2025, which will be a couple of days after the April board meeting. And then staff will continue to take a look at applications, and right now I think probably the May and the June meetings are definitely going to be meetings for determining by the board how to award funds. And we'll send out award notices no later than July 31st based on the timeline the board set. So happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Thank you, Doris. Any questions about the CC tap or whatever we're calling it? I mean, it's exciting. I'm glad we got, more than a handful of applications, and it looks like, we may see some more come through, I imagine, as the deadline gets closer. So just appreciate all the work on this. And anyone else? All right, Jairus, I think we're okay to move on.
We do have Chair Emily Hadaway, the CDOT Legislative Liaison, to help with this topic. Emily, do you want to kick it off, or do you want me to kick it off?
Sorry, I was just getting caught up. Are we diving into the ledge update or going into another topic?
The ledge update.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I'm happy to dive right in.
Okay. Well, we have the couple of bills that we talked about last time. So Emily, I don't know if you want to talk specifically about gosh, I can't even read today. Sorry, 2530 and some of the other ones that were postponed indefinitely.
Sure, absolutely. Sorry, I wasn't sure if we were bringing up the slides or not. Yes, so SB 2530 was one we talked about a lot last month. That bill has been amended. I think the folks on here are mostly tracking those changes, but it's been scaled back from the original version of the bill to really focus on identifying where those gaps are in multimodal planning and creating an inventory of upcoming projects. And so all the feedback that the sponsors have heard so far, I think is mostly positive. It was a pretty easy committee hearing. We testified in support and didn't get many questions. And I think that most local agencies are feeling comfortable to have those planning requirements scaled back, given all of the different planning requirements that have passed in the few years, and also everything that's happening on the federal level and state budget. I'm sure there's a lot there. So I think that bill is in a good spot. And then, yes, all of the bills that we also talked about last month that pertain to reducing any funds for NAAPME or eliminating those fees have been postponed indefinitely. So there's no chance of seeing those back this session unless someone introduces a new bill. It's always likely that this comes up again next year. I think it's going to be a pretty common thing that we come back to the legislature each year, particularly on retail delivery fee and talk about why it's important and why we need to keep it in place. And then as far as just other updates that I think are relevant, I did want to just kind of share a general CDOT budget update too of kind of what's been happening the last few weeks at the Joint Budget Committee. Even up until last night, they were making decisions. The long bill has not been introduced yet, but it's likely to get introduced, I believe, Monday, and then heard on the Senate floor on Thursday. Some of the decisions they made include reductions to CDOT's general fund transfers. So that goes back to SB 21-260. So that bill had specified a $100 million general fund transfer to CDOT each year, I believe, for 10 or 12 years in the future. And so that has been reduced for this upcoming fiscal year, FY26, as well as FY27. So this upcoming fiscal year, it's being reduced from by $64 million, so to $36 million, and then next year it'll be reduced by 49.5 million. So originally it was 100 million, it's going down to 50.4. So those didn't come as a big surprise to us. We did propose those cuts as part of our portion of making up for the state budget deficit, and general fund is particularly scarce this year. So naturally what that means is it'll impact funding to the 10-year plan and basically impact how many projects we're able to program in the next few years. But there wasn't, it is also going to be mentioned in that legislation as part of the long bill that there will be additional funding tacked on to the end of that appropriation schedule so that we are held whole over time. So that's one general fund change. They also voted to eliminate the $7 million annual general fund transfer to revitalizing main streets. That was not a proposal that came from CDOT, but since it is general fund, it was a little bit more, I think, on the table in their eyes than some of our other transportation funding. And so that was one change that came last week. Reduction to the road safety surcharge was another decision item that we had proposed originally. That was a reduction in $3.70 across weight classes of the road safety surcharge that goes to faster safety and asset management at CDOT. So that would be a reduction in $22 million over the next 2 years, so $44 million total. That reduction would only impact CDOT, and so the legislation would modify the distribution so cities and counties were held harmless in the next few years. We were really hoping they didn't touch that funding, although we did propose it. They did take some other funding from other spots that we did not propose, so we were hoping they would leave that one whole, but it ended up being pretty tight year as we also anticipated. So we're still kind of speaking internally about next steps on that one. And then transfer of funds from the multimodal options fund. So that's kind of the other big change that the JBC made that we did not propose ourselves, but they have mentioned the cash fund of the multimodal options fund for a few different hearings now, or so the balance of the multimodal options fund. And so they chose to sweep 71.8 million from that cash fund. And then they maintained the ongoing general fund transfer to multimodal options fund. And then other bills, I don't think there's too much else that I think is relevant for this group. There is another enterprise bill that was introduced last week. That's the funding for motor vehicle collision prevention. So that's HB 25-1303. That would create a new enterprise under CDOT that would fund grants to locals for vulnerable road user infrastructure, as well as wildlife crossings. And so that's a bill that has also been introduced, and we've been navigating with stakeholders too. So if there's any other bills you've heard about that I can help address, let me know. I know that the budget stuff is also hard to track. So we have a written update we can send after this too, so everyone can kind of wrap their minds of what exactly happened the last few weeks, but happy to answer any questions here as well.
Any questions for Emily? Emily, on the MMOF funds, did that, so is if folks recently received MMOF funds, will they not be getting those then? Like if, you haven't signed a contract, if you've just sort of, maybe been awarded some of the funding through like an MPO or something like that, or how does that work?
Yeah, I think we still have to have some more conversations with STAC and MPOs to to review exactly how this will work. In general, that number was based off of what we learned when they had kind of asked of encumbered versus unencumbered. It's not very easy to dial down a number like that. But we did really stress that there should be nothing that is under contract with a contractor that's dig ready that should get canceled. But also, there are other types of contracts like IGAs and of course all of that funding has been awarded. And so I think one silver lining in all of this is that they did not remove that 10.5 million ongoing general fund transfer. And then also there is that ongoing retail delivery fee that goes to MMOF. So that will hopefully help replenish that funding so that maybe help, projects not get significantly delayed or canceled. But I know that the budget team is preparing to speak to STAC about this next week and are working closely with DTD to determine exactly what this will look like.
Thank you. When we're talking about, gaps, that we have in transportation funding, I mean, this is the very kind of thing that, we may need to address, just because I think about some of the funding that we did at our TPR and, some of it is, I don't know, sidewalk connections in Keensburg. I mean, there's definitely some need there, and there's there's some equity issues there, and so I guess we'll wait to see what that looks like going forward.
Yeah, and
Thank you.
as we learn more, we'll definitely share that. And I think there's just some work to do now to figure out exactly. Everything's been moving so quickly. So yeah, we'll keep
Yeah.
you informed.
And yeah, I definitely understand that there have to be cuts. Yeah, if you could send out, maybe Darius can send out for us just a review of kind of what's happening at this point. So
Yep, absolutely.
especially there's a few members that aren't on today too. So any questions for Emily before we let her go? Okay, thank you, Emily. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right. We have a decision item now. We're going to talk about the meeting schedule going forward. So Darius, will you introduce this?
Absolutely. The meeting schedule that the staff has put together is shouldn't come as a surprise. So we're taking a look at the fourth. I was going to say Friday. We don't do these on Friday. Fourth Thursday of the month as the tentative meeting schedule on a monthly basis. If the board wishes to meet, if there is no major items for the board, especially when grants have been awarded and we're waiting on, it's actually just paying bills. There is a quarterly meeting schedule highlighted if that was the case, knowing that per statute the board has to meet at least 4 times a year. And based off of the previous precedent, no meeting in November because that usually falls on Thanksgiving, and pushing it to the week after, which is about December 4th, mainly to approve the annual report, which is published on the website and submitted to both the Transportation Commission, and to the legislature. And so this is the proposed meeting schedule. There's not too many surprises with this one. I think the May 28th one is adjusting for I was going to say Labor Day, but Memorial Day in that month. But it's keeping that cadence going forward, so we at least have those on the calendar, and we'll get invites out if this is approved by the board. Additionally, there has been a potential question brought up that would an in-person meeting of the board be helpful, especially when reviewing and going over applications with the CTAP grants, particularly in at the May meeting, since that is probably when weather should be better. It's getting much better out there. It's a nice sunny day out there today. It actually looks a little cloudy right now, but putting that together at the end of May as a kind of a proposal, because it works a little bit better bringing forward all the paperwork and documentation. But that, of course, is up for the board to decide. And since the last two in-person meetings had been in Denver, staff can certainly take a look at accommodating folks up in the Northern Front Range and going up to Northern Front Range. We have an excellent facility. CDOT has an excellent facility in Greeley off of US 34 that I'm pretty sure we'll be able to accommodate if the board would like us to pursue that. But that is up to the board's decision on whether they would want to have the in-person meetings and to approve the schedule. I think it's probably not quite time yet to talk about the less than monthly cadence until we get, and that may be a decision for future. But the question before the board today is one, do you approve the meeting schedule for fiscal year 26, which would be the formal question, and then probably the informal question is, would the board be amenable to exploring a potential in-person meeting in May?
Okay, we'll open that up for discussion. Any thoughts?
I'll chime in saying that meeting schedule looks good to me. I would not be able to attend the May meeting if it was in person or virtually due to another conflict, but support whatever the rest of folks prefer.
Thank you, Director Furco. Director Holguin, please.
Thank you, Chair. I also would not be able to attend in person in May, but I really like the idea of in-person meetings. I would also suggest that when we go to quarterly meetings, if we can make them 2 hours instead of an hour and a half, just to make sure that we have adequate time to go over what's needed. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other thoughts? Director Sunika.
Thank you. I think I'm pretty open. I'm flexible. So, but I think if we can maybe, it's important for Director Farco and Director Hoaging, to be able to attend. So if there's any flexibility in that date, I would be flexible if it's possible. Thank you.
Sure, if I could send out alternative dates and get a kind of a poll from the board to see if there's something that would work better for board members to kind of work through that, so we can move that meeting back and forward per your discretion.
I think that would be a good idea. Maybe, to see if we can find a date where we could get, majority of the board in person. And then, I think we would always have that option for people to attend virtually. But because this is our first, time looking at these applications, and, some things are easier than other things to do virtually. I feel like, kind of being together and looking over those applications and really having a good conversation would be great if we can make that happen. I mean, I also understand that sometimes that just isn't achievable, but so yeah, let's throw out some dates for May and see if we can find something that works for folks. Hey, legislative session will be done, so that's exciting. I know that frees up my calendar a lot. But yeah, we'll do that. And then I think the dates otherwise look great. I think at some point moving into the, kind of quarterly cadence sounds good. It sounds like we're maybe a little ways off from that just because of the grant, work that we have to do in the next, let's say, probably year or so. But I think that, at some point we'll have established criteria. We'll have a cadence for the grant applications and process, and we'll probably have less work to do. So it probably makes sense to look at that. Like I said, maybe in a year. if that makes sense. And there could be months where we don't have that much to do, as we're waiting for grants to come in. I mean, we could put the meeting up, and if we just don't have that much business, we can cancel it. People usually don't mind getting an hour and a half of time back if there's not a lot to discuss. So we could also operate from that kind of space, which, which might be good. Um, all right, so uh, looks like we need a motion for the dates that were presented. Director Stockinger?
Yeah, I have a question whether we're being asked to move either the monthly dates or the quarterly dates, or if we locked in on that. I don't have a preference. I think if we do the large program in 2025, we probably will want to meet in August and or September. But after that, I think it's probably quarterly is fine. So I guess some clarity on whether Darius is asking for a preference for quarterly or monthly.
The motion before the board is to lock in these dates for future board meetings, these dates on the calendar. It is not, these dates will be advertised as potential board meeting dates, is not asking whether it will be quarterly. It will be assuming monthly unless the board changes otherwise.
Great. Well, in that case, I would move that we adopt that FY26 calendar of meetings for the non-attainment board.
Thank you. There's a
second.
motion. Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All right, seeing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Is there anyone opposed? And anyone abstaining from this vote? Okay, the ayes have it. I'm not sure how many ayes there are.
We have
But-
6 today.
Okay, there you go. Oh yeah, who seconded the motion? I'm sorry.
I did, Stacy.
Stacy. All right. Okay, good. And now enterprise budget and program updates with Darius.
I think this should be fairly quick because I think we've talked about most of these topics already. It's a little fuzzy on the screen, but there is a version in your package just showing the budgets to actual to date, what's been collected from the enterprise, and what has been expended in terms of services that have been provided. Most of it has been on staff support, whether it's from CDOT, the Department of Law, the language translation services that staff has used. And those have been the major expenditures. And then the fees, the revenue that has come in from the different fees that the enterprises collects. But if there is any questions, happy to answer it. But everything is looking within budget right now. There's no major issues to report from that. And most of besides preparing for this meeting, most of what staff has been doing is working through the CTAP grant program and answering questions and reviewing applications and getting items ready as well. So not much else to report from there. I think April, we do have a meeting scheduled. We can continue to provide CTAP updates, continue discussion on the larger grant program, legislative update, of course. If there is a quarterly budget amendment, that's when it's scheduled, but it's not looking like there would be we're needing one at this time. Usually when we have quarterly budget amendments is to reconcile revenue funds, but we'll see if that's available at that time. And then the May 22nd meeting, of course, will send out a kind of a poll to see if we can do that in person. But I think that's CTAP applications review is probably the primary item for discussion at that meeting. And happy to answer any questions, but that's all that I have today for the board.
Thank you, Darius. Any questions for Darius before we adjourn?
No questions. I want to thank CDOT staff as always for all the work you are doing in between meetings to make these go so smoothly and be so informative.
Absolutely. And I do want to thank not only the staff that's on our team, Phil and Garrett and now Lexi, but also the staff from the Division of Accounting and Finance, Kay and Matt and Sam, and of course, Susanna, the board secretary as well.
Great. Yes, definitely want to always thank CDOT staff. We appreciate your work. All right, nothing else before we adjourn. Then at 3:54, we're adjourned, and enjoy your 36 minutes. See you next month,
Thank you.
everyone.
Thanks. Good meeting today.
Thanks.